Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Elaine Weiss is a speaker, a journalist, the author of The Woman's Hour, The Great Fight to Win the Vote. In fact, a musical that I loved on Broadway, Suffs, was related to this. Elaine has written a new book called Spell Freedom, and it's about a little school or schools that started and was really behind the civil rights movement, and a fascinating look at what ordinary citizens can do and what they can make happen. And it also takes us through our past history so that we can understand or try to understand our present. I'm going to introduce you to Elaine. So I'm curious, Elaine, you've done a lot, so many things, but where did Spell Freedom come from?
Well, thank you, Joan. I'm really pleased to be with you. The idea for this book really comes out of my previous books, especially The Woman's Hour, where I investigated how women over 7 decades fought for their right to be full citizens, to be able to vote. And I realized that the next great suffrage battle, the next great battle of our democracy, was when Black citizens fought to regain their constitutional rights to vote. They already had the right to vote, but they, especially in the southern states, they were denied it for decades until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So I wanted to explore this next phase of our fight for a more complete and inclusive democracy. And I was gratified to be able to find this story, which allows me to explore the civil rights movement through the lens of, as you said so well, ordinary people who were standing up to oppression and defending democracy.
Right. And how you found a classroom or told us about this little classroom, which was the back of a grocery store.
Yes.
I mean, amazing to be able to research that. That was like an archaeologist almost. Hallelujah. How did this happen?
Well, that's the fun of writing narrative history, is you get to spend a lot of time digging in the archives, various archives. And again, these aren't the most famous people in civil rights history. These aren't the names that we're used to hearing: Dr. King, Reverend Abernathy, John Lewis. They all appear in the book. They all play a role. But I tell the story through these, again, very ordinary people. My main characters are a school teacher, a Black school teacher from Charleston, a Black beautician, a small businessman, and a white man who calls himself a radical hillbilly in the mountains of Tennessee. But these schools, which were called citizenship schools, so they were to prepare Black citizens who had been denied a decent education in the Jim Crow South, which was very purposeful because education is power. And they often did not know how to read and write. And so these schools, the primary purpose was to be able to pass the literacy tests, which were very unfair and were imposed upon Black citizens in order to disqualify them for voting. But it taught them reading and writing. It started with holding a pencil, because most of these people had never had to hold a pencil before to write. So they have to learn the grip of a pencil. And the citizenship school idea actually starts in the back of a bus with a bus driver speaking to his neighbors in Gullah, the Creole language of the Sea Islands. And they are learning the Constitution of South Carolina in order to try to pass the test. And the next phase, as you said, is in the back of a grocery store on a rural sea island, behind the cans of vegetables, behind the shelves, and in a room that had no windows to protect the students and the volunteer teacher from reprisals from the whites on the island. So these citizenship schools weren't big brick edifices that we think of school. They were community classes held in people's living rooms, in their garages, in beauty shops with the curtains closed, in funeral parlors after hours, in mechanics' garages, and they were neighbor teaching neighbor. So they were very much a grassroots effort to prepare the Black communities all across the South in the 1950s and early 60s to not only reclaim their right to vote, but to realize that they had constitutional rights as American citizens that they needed to demand.
And they had to prepare themselves to deal with adversity along with everything else. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just, I can do this.
Oh, no, you're so right, Joan. I was really shocked in my research, realizing the kind of opposition that even attempting to register to vote entailed. I'll give you an example. If you were brave enough to try to register to vote in your town, and this was, again, it was worse in the rural areas, and you went to the courthouse and the registrar, which was all white registrars, and you attempted to take the literacy test. And even if you were a college graduate, you would often be failed by the registrar. But by the time you got back to your house, the registrar had called your landlord. If you were a tenant farmer, called the landowner. And you and your family and even your extended family were evicted on the spot. Your stuff thrown out into the road. If the registrar had called your employer and you were fired and you were blackballed in that town and you couldn't get any other job, the pharmacy would no longer fill the prescriptions for your sick child. The milkman wouldn't deliver milk for your children. The loan on your truck was pulled. It was a concerted effort to intimidate and harass and punish anyone who tried to vote. And there's an example in the book of a community in West Tennessee, not far from Memphis, where the community decided they were going to register and they were going to vote. This is in the 1960 election. And they do. And then they are all evicted from their shacks that they lived in as sharecroppers. It's now beginning of winter, and they're all thrown out. There are 400 people, from grandmas to babies, who are out in the elements with no food, no housing.
And mostly women, right?
Yes, many women. And they're living for the next 2 years in tents, in muddy ground with no hygienic facilities. And this is punishment for their voting.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Get into your body's vitals with the Vitals app on Apple Watch.
I wanna get into my body and let my skin do the talking. I wanna feel like I'm myself again.
The Vitals app tracks key overnight metrics so you can spot changes in your health before you feel them. The Vitals app on Apple Watch. iPhone XS or later required. The Vitals app is for wellness purposes only and not for medical use.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino. A meal isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what you bring to the table. San Pellegrino believes the table is where the best of life happens. That's what makes gathering around it so rich and rewarding. And with their unique, sparkling natural mineral water, San Pellegrino brings its best so you can bring yours.
And it's from these beginnings that we have the civil rights movement and everything else. And all these women, you know, who had not had this kind of life before, created a whole new society.
Yes, the women really did lead. There's a famous historian of the civil rights movement who said, in this movement, as in many movements, men led, but women organized. And women were at the heart of the movement. They don't get enough credit. There are some women who in recent years have been given more credit, people like Ella Baker and Dorothy Cotton and Diane Nash. But in fact, there were thousands of Black women who had always been organizing in their cities and towns. They were on the NAACP executive boards. They were running benevolent associations in their towns. And they joined together, and they were the local organizers in every town and every city in the 11 southern states to lead this movement. And when Dr. King would come to a town for a campaign, they had to be prepared. You were taking a huge risk to march in a demonstration, to even go to a voting rights meeting. There would be sheriff deputies out in the parking lot taking down your license plate numbers, and these would be reported to the sheriff, and you'd be harassed on the road, or Klan night riders would come and pump bullets into your house. And so this is the kind of oppression that these very brave people are facing. And what the citizenship schools did was not just teach unlettered people who had been deprived of an education how to read and write, how to do basic arithmetic, so they could function, so they weren't dependent upon their white employer to sign their checks or to describe a contract. And they were often cheated because they couldn't do this themselves. So their sense of confidence and agency is greatly expanded when they learn to sign their names and they learn to be able to read and write. But more than that, the citizenship schools taught Black history, which these people had never encountered before. It was prohibited from being taught in the Southern curricula. And of course, now we're facing a troubled time when the idea of teaching Black history is again being challenged. But they also learned their constitutional rights. They learned how government is structured. You know, they had no idea the president, the Congress, the state legislature, the mayor, who was making the policies that they had to live under. And once they understand that, then they understand they have rights as citizens. They're as much rights as anyone else. And they become what Septima Clark, who's the main character of my book, a school teacher, says they are ready from within. They're spiritually strengthened. They're politically knowledgeable. They now possess literacy skills, and they're ready when Dr. King comes to town for a campaign. They're ready to march. they're ready to sign a petition to have their children enter a desegregated school. They're ready to try to register to vote, and will stand in line for hours while their neighbors, their white neighbors, are throwing hot coffee and pepper from the rooftop of the courthouse onto the line to try to dissuade them from trying to vote. So,
you took us through this crazy time, all this political change and what's going on even socially. How today, when you were writing your book and you're looking at what's going on today, how do you see the parallel, or is there?
Oh, yes, there is. I'm sorry to say there is. I began researching this book in 2019 and wrote it. It was, finished more than a year ago. And I did not anticipate that we'd be entering a time when voting rights are again very much endangered, when the teaching of history is being, shall we say, politely challenged or suppressed, because the idea that talking about America's mistakes, like Jim Crow laws, like slavery, like oppression in many levels, is somehow too divisive or too controversial. I say that's what history is for. History is to teach us hard lessons and that we learn from them and do better. They're not to be thrown under the rug and not looked at because they might be upsetting. They're supposed to upset us if we did things wrong. I did not anticipate that our constitutional separations of government would be under siege. I didn't anticipate that there would be book bannings like there are now. I don't know if my book will be banned. It might not be able to be taught in public universities or public schools. I don't know that. We'll see what happens. I do know that I had an event at a presidential library in Atlanta, the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library, and it was canceled, abruptly canceled after it had been approved and announced. But when the new administration took over the National Archives and Records Administration, which administers the presidential libraries, it was deemed too controversial.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and Michelob Ultra is getting you closer to the game than ever with courtside seats and more. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access Courtside 2024 to 2025 sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Ends on July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/superior access/courtside for free entry deadlines and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by PetSmart. Stop by for Yappy Hour with your pet at PetSmart. Save $5 on walk-in grooming services like nail trims, ear cleaning, brushing, and more. No appointment needed every weekday from 2 to 6 p.m. And while you're there, Yappy Hour includes exclusive in-store deals like 25% off pet toys. Visit services.petsmart.com/grooming to learn more.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
So good, so good, so good.
Great brands, great prices. Everyone's got a reason to rack.
You know they have Marc Jacobs?
Nike? Yes. Just so many good brands.
Vince, Birkenstock, and more brands you love are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Plus, buy it online and pick it up in-store the same day for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Well, the lessons we learn. So, Elaine, now that Spell Freedom is out and people are talking about it, what's your next project?
I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I'm still touring. I'm talking to audiences. What's so extraordinary is the reaction of the audiences. I've been in 5 cities in the last 10 days, in the South mostly. And the reaction of the audiences is extraordinary to me because they connect the dots of this history of ordinary people
doing extraordinary things.
Yes, and facing oppression, facing unconstitutional acts, facing threats to their democracy, and coming up with these creative and courageous solutions and working for years to implement them. And they see that they ask me, well, what should we do now? I mean, I'm not truly in a position to try to map out a plan for how do we get out of this situation right now. But I do say there are lessons in this history that we can learn about organizing, about standing up for democracy. And the audience it's very emotional and very concerned that we better learn these lessons. We better learn that we can't take threats to our Constitution and to our democracy sitting down. And I'm both encouraged and deeply moved by the reactions of my audiences. And so I hope that this book is able to give inspiration and some courage during a troubled time, as I see it. The next book, I don't know. I do like exploring our American attitudes towards democracy. We talk a lot about being a democratic nation. We talk a lot about the importance of it, but there are gaps in our practice. And I think exploring that helps us understand what we need to do to make it better.
Right, we're at very different and difficult times, and
I believe we are.
And
I'm excited. I'll be coming to New York next week, which is my native town.
Did you grow up here?
Born and raised, and listening to WABC.
Oh, well, welcome home.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. All the best to you. Spell Freedom, Elaine Weiss's brand new book. And it starts with an underground group of schools that literally built the civil rights movement. Good job. Thank you so much. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you are listening to your favorite WABC radio station. More ahead.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.